This woman named Jennifer thought she had it all figured out. At 24 years old, she believed she'd found the perfect man who would take care of her forever. She painted herself as the ideal traditional wife, cooking his meals, keeping his house clean, and talking about building a beautiful future together. But what her boyfriend didn't know was that while she was promising him forever, she was living a completely different life online. And when he discovered the truth the night before their romantic vacation to Bali, everything she'd built came crashing down in less than 24 hours. What happened next destroyed not just her relationship, but her entire life. And honestly, she still doesn't understand that she caused it all herself. I'm Emma, and this is Mrs. Emma, where we bring you the most unbelievable real-life stories. Today's story is about deception, consequences, and what happens when the truth catches up with you in the worst possible way. Jennifer met Ricky at a house party through mutual friends. She was immediately drawn to him because at 29, he seemed to have his life together in ways most men her age didn't. He had a stable warehouse job, owned his own place, and wasn't playing the usual dating games that exhausted her. When they started seeing each other seriously, he treated her well, always paying for dates and showing her genuine care and attention. For Jennifer, this felt like exactly what she'd been searching for: someone mature, someone stable, someone who could provide the life she wanted. But here's where things get complicated. For 2 years before meeting Ricky, Jennifer had been creating adult content online. She made decent money from it, more than many of her friends earned at their regular jobs. It started as a side income because, in her words, normal jobs just didn't pay enough anymore. She'd built up a loyal subscriber base and had gotten comfortable with this lifestyle. When her relationship with Ricky started getting serious after a few months, Jennifer began thinking about her future. She started dropping hints about wanting a more traditional relationship where she could focus on homemaking while her partner handled the finances. She spoke romantically about being the kind of woman who could create a warm home, who would be there when he came back from work, who would support him emotionally without making everything a competition. Ricky responded positively to these ideas. He'd grown up with parents who had traditional roles, and he respected that dynamic. He talked about wanting a wife who would be his partner in that classic sense, someone who would prioritize their home and relationship. Jennifer saw an opportunity and played it perfectly. When she stayed at his place, she'd cook elaborate dinners and clean up without being asked. She'd make sure he had everything he needed after long work days. She'd listen patiently when he vented about job stress, never centering herself or her own problems. She was crafting an image of the ideal traditional partner. And here's the critical part. During all of this, she was still actively creating and selling adult content online, but in her mind, these were two completely separate worlds that would never intersect. She told herself it was just business, nothing personal, and that she'd gradually phase it out once they moved in together and she didn't need the extra income. She never told Ricky about this part of her life. Not directly. Not honestly. When discussions about moving in together began, Jennifer presented her traditional wife vision in the most appealing way possible. She spoke about defined roles, about her taking care of their home while he handled financial responsibilities. She made it sound like a partnership built on mutual respect and clear expectations. Ricky seemed genuinely excited. He even started planning a special trip to Bali to celebrate this new chapter they were beginning together. Jennifer was thrilled. This felt like confirmation that her plan was working perfectly. Here was a man willing to invest real money in creating beautiful memories with her, someone who valued what she could offer. Everything was falling into place exactly as she'd hoped. The evening before their trip, they were having a perfectly relaxed time together. They were lying in bed, trying to decide what to order for dinner, and Jennifer was doing her nails because she wanted them to look perfect for vacation photos. It was one of those comfortable, intimate moments that made her feel secure in their relationship. Ricky offered to handle the food order so she could focus on her nails. Without thinking twice, Jennifer handed him her phone. She noticed him pause for a moment while using it, but she was concentrating on getting her polish even and didn't pay much attention. He seemed to take longer than usual to place the order, but she figured he was just being indecisive about food choices. When the pizza arrived, though, something had shifted in his energy. He was quieter during dinner, giving shorter responses when she tried to discuss their trip plans. When she asked if something was wrong, he blamed work stress and exhaustion. It made sense since he'd been putting in extra hours before their vacation time off. They watched television and went to bed early, but Jennifer could sense something bothering him. He kept checking his phone, which was unusual during their time together. When she woke in the middle of the night, he was lying awake staring at the ceiling. He claimed he couldn't sleep and was thinking about work responsibilities. The next morning was even stranger. Ricky was awake and dressed before her, already drinking coffee when she came out of the bedroom. Their mornings were usually sweet and intimate, but he barely looked up when she greeted him. When she tried to talk about their flight later that day and how excited she was, he just nodded vaguely and said they'd figure it out. Jennifer spent the morning running last-minute errands, getting her nails touched up again, picking up new outfits for the trip, and making sure everything was packed perfectly. She kept texting Ricky updates and asking if he needed anything, but his responses were unusually short and lacked his typical enthusiasm. By the time she returned home that afternoon, anxiety was building inside her. Ricky was already there, which was odd since he normally worked later. He was sitting on the couch with an expression she'd never seen before. It wasn't anger exactly, but an intense focus that made her deeply uncomfortable. He said they needed to talk before leaving for the airport. What followed was one of the most terrifying conversations of Jennifer's life. Ricky started asking specific questions about her past. What had she been doing for work before they met? How had she been supporting herself? At first, she thought he was just curious or trying to understand her background better, so she gave vague answers about having different jobs and figuring things out like everyone does. But his questions became more pointed. Was there anything important about her past that he should know? Anything she hadn't told him? Jennifer felt defensive. This felt like an interrogation rather than a normal conversation. She told him her past didn't matter since they were building a future together. She didn't understand why he was questioning her like this when they should be getting ready for their romantic vacation. The timing felt insulting, like he was trying to catch her in some kind of lie. Then he asked specifically about online accounts. Did she have any profiles or activities he didn't know about? Panic set in. She realized he might have discovered something. She tried to stay calm, turning it back on him. Why was he being so suspicious? Didn't he trust her? She pointed out how hurtful this was, especially right before their special trip. But Ricky kept pressing, asking more direct questions about whether she was hiding anything. Jennifer could tell he already knew something, but she wasn't sure how much. She tried deflecting by getting emotional, telling him it hurt that he would doubt her like this. Why was he choosing this moment instead of just enjoying their relationship? The entire time, he remained completely calm, which made her more nervous than if he'd been yelling. He had this controlled way of speaking that made it clear he'd been thinking about this conversation for a while. When she tried changing the subject back to their trip, he simply said they needed to finish talking first. That's when Ricky pulled out his phone and showed her screenshots. Her own messages. Her own conversations. Actual screenshots with recent timestamps. Her heart sank. He'd been investigating her. He'd gone through her phone the night before when she'd handed it to him to order food, seen a notification, and then spent hours researching everything behind her back. Jennifer immediately tried damage control. She explained that most of the content was old, that she wasn't really active anymore. She was just keeping the account open to let remaining subscribers know she was transitioning out of that phase of her life. But then he showed her more evidence. Messages where she'd been responding to people just days earlier. Messages where she'd been promising new content. She felt trapped. There was no way to explain that away. She tried minimizing the whole thing, telling him it was just business and didn't mean anything emotional. She was only responding to messages to be professional about winding things down. What they had together was completely separate. This online stuff was just a way to make money while she figured out her next steps. Then Ricky revealed the worst part. He'd created a fake account himself to test her. He'd messaged her with a request for custom content, and she'd responded within 15 minutes, offering exactly what he'd asked for. He pointed out that she always took forever to text him back, but jumped immediately when a potential customer contacted her. Jennifer felt humiliated for falling into that trap. How was she supposed to know it was him? She got angry, accusing him of deception. How could he go behind her back and set up fake accounts to spy on her? What he'd done was manipulative. It showed he didn't trust her enough to just have an honest conversation. She tried flipping it back on him, asking why he thought it was okay to trick her, instead of asking direct questions. Ricky remained completely calm through all of this, which frustrated her even more. She tried making him feel guilty for not trusting her and for handling things in such a sneaky way. She brought up their relationship and the trip, saying if he really loved her, he would understand that people have complicated pasts and that she was trying to build a future with him. When he asked directly if she'd been planning to keep creating content even after moving in with him and living off his income, she avoided giving a straight answer. She said they could figure out the details together. The important thing was that they both wanted the same kind of relationship. But she could tell her non-answer was making things worse. That's when Ricky told her the trip was canceled. She needed to get her things and leave his house. Jennifer couldn't believe what she was hearing. Was he seriously going to throw away their entire relationship over something that had nothing to do with them personally? He was being dramatic and unreasonable. This was exactly the kind of overreaction that ruins good relationships. But she could see in his face that he'd already decided. Nothing she said would change his mind. The next few hours were surreal. She had to pack all her belongings while Ricky sat there silently watching. She kept trying to talk to him, to make him see how crazy this situation was. But he wouldn't engage. When she finished packing, he walked her to the door and told her not to contact him again. She heard the locks click behind her. She was standing on the porch with her bags like some rejected delivery. She tried calling and texting immediately, but he'd already blocked her number. She couldn't believe someone could just cut off all communication after 5 months together. She had to call her mother for a ride. Trying to explain why she was suddenly homeless without revealing the whole truth was humiliating. She made up some story about a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion. Moving back into her childhood bedroom at 24 felt like complete failure. For the first few days, Jennifer kept expecting Ricky to realize he'd overreacted and want to talk things through. But her phone stayed silent. She started reaching out to mutual friends, hoping someone could talk sense into him or at least find out what he was thinking. She presented the situation as a misunderstanding, saying Ricky had discovered something from her past and freaked out instead of just talking about it. Most friends seemed confused because she couldn't explain details without making herself look bad. She kept things vague, just saying Ricky had found out about some work she used to do and couldn't handle it. Some tried reaching out to him for her, but apparently he wasn't talking to anyone about what happened. The worst part was seeing his social media posts from Bali. He'd actually gone on their trip by himself, posting pictures of all the places they were supposed to visit together. The photos made it clear he was having an amazing time without her, like she'd never been part of the plan at all. Seeing him enjoy their romantic vacation solo made her feel completely disposable. She started telling friends and family that Ricky had dumped her over something from her past, making him sound controlling and judgmental. She painted herself as the victim of someone who couldn't accept that people have complicated histories. Most people were sympathetic, especially when she cried about how much she missed him and how unfair everything was. But she was also getting angrier every day without hearing from him. Here she was, heartbroken and displaced, while he was living his best life in paradise. That's when Jennifer decided to call his mother. If anyone could talk sense into him, it would be family. She called crying, explaining she was heartbroken and couldn't understand why Ricky was being so cruel. She told his mother she'd made some mistakes in her past, but she loved her son and wanted to make things right. She made it sound like he was punishing her for things that happened before they even met. His mother seemed sympathetic at first. She said she'd always liked Jennifer and thought they were good together. She promised to talk to him when he got back from his trip. Jennifer felt hopeful for the first time in days, but that plan completely backfired. A few days later, she got an angry call from his mother telling her to stop contacting their family and to leave Ricky alone. Apparently, he'd told her the full truth, including showing her some of the content Jennifer had been creating. His mother said she was disgusted and couldn't believe Jennifer had been deceiving her son while pretending to want a traditional relationship. Jennifer was furious that Ricky had shared private information about her with his family. It felt like such a violation, taking something personal and embarrassing and spreading it to people who had no business knowing. That phone call made her realize Ricky wasn't just ending their relationship. He was actively trying to destroy her reputation. The breaking point came about 6 weeks later when Jennifer saw Ricky with someone new at the grocery store. A girl who looked completely different from her, sweet and normal, laughing at something he'd said. They looked comfortable together, like they'd been dating for months. Seeing him replace her so quickly made her realize that everything they'd had together had meant nothing to him. That night, Jennifer decided she was done being the bigger person. She called her 2 closest friends and told them she needed their help with something important. If Ricky wanted to treat her like garbage and move on like she'd never mattered, then maybe it was time for him to face some consequences. They decided to wait for him outside his house one evening when he got home from work. Jennifer wanted to confront him face to face and make him explain why he thought it was okay to treat her so badly. When he pulled into his driveway, they approached his car before he could get inside. Jennifer tried talking to him, demanding that he at least have the decency to explain his side of things. But he ignored them completely and walked toward his front door. Seeing him dismiss her like she was some random stranger made her absolutely furious. After everything they'd shared, after all the time she'd invested in their relationship, he couldn't even acknowledge her existence. She started raising her voice, calling him a coward for refusing to face her. But he just went inside and closed the door like they weren't even there. That's when Jennifer's anger took over completely. Her friends were just as outraged, saying no one deserved to be treated with such disrespect. They ended up taking their frustration out on his property, throwing rocks at his front door and windows. In the moment, it felt good to finally get some kind of reaction, even if it was just the sound of breaking glass. They figured he deserved some inconvenience after putting her through months of emotional torture. They left feeling like they'd finally stood up for themselves and made a statement. For a few days, Jennifer felt satisfied that they'd gotten some kind of justice. But then the police called. Ricky had security cameras that recorded everything they'd done, including clear footage of all three of them damaging his property. She was being charged with vandalism and trespassing, and she'd need to appear in court. Jennifer tried explaining it was just a relationship dispute and that he'd provoked them by being so cruel, but the police said property damage was a criminal matter regardless of circumstances. She had to hire a lawyer, which used up most of her savings. The legal process dragged on for months. She had to keep appearing in court while trying to keep her family from finding out the full extent of what had happened. The stress made it almost impossible to maintain her online work consistently. She started losing subscribers because her content became sporadic, and her attitude was obviously affected. The worst part was watching Ricky continue to thrive while she dealt with all these consequences. His new girlfriend seemed to be getting more serious. From what she could see on social media, his life was going perfectly. Meanwhile, she was stuck dealing with legal fees, a criminal record, and the humiliation of having to explain to potential employers why she had charges pending. The whole situation ruined her reputation in their social circle completely. Most mutual friends took his side once they heard about the vandalism, saying she'd crossed a line and proven he was right to end things. Jennifer felt like everyone was against her, judging her for fighting back when she'd been the one who was wronged in the first place. Now Jennifer is stuck living with her parents indefinitely, struggling to rebuild her finances while dealing with ongoing legal issues. She has to undergo background checks for any real job, and having an arrest record makes everything more complicated. Meanwhile, Ricky moved on with his life completely, while Jennifer is still dealing with the fallout from decisions she made. Looking at this story, it's hard not to see the pattern. Jennifer wanted the benefits of a traditional relationship while continuing to live a completely different life in secret. She wanted someone to provide for her while she deceived him about who she really was and what she was really doing. When the truth came out, she blamed everyone except herself. She saw Ricky's discovery of her deception as him being controlling rather than him protecting himself from someone who was lying to him. And when he moved on with his life, she couldn't accept it. She escalated from trying to manipulate him through family and friends to literally vandalizing his property. She turned a situation where she was in the wrong into a criminal matter that will follow her for years. This story isn't about a man who couldn't accept someone's past. It's about a woman who actively deceived someone while planning to benefit from his trust and resources. And when that deception was discovered, instead of taking responsibility, she destroyed what little was left of her own life. Sometimes the consequences we face aren't unfair. Sometimes they're exactly what we created for ourselves. What do you think? Was Jennifer truly the victim here, or did she create her own disaster? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story made you think about honesty, trust, and consequences in relationships, hit that like button. Share this video with your friends who need to hear it, and make sure you subscribe to Mrs. Emma and turn on notifications so you never miss another unbelievable true story. Until next time, this is Emma reminding you that the truth always finds a way to surface, and when it does, there's nowhere left to hide.